Welcome ahoy! In this video I make a tea tray. This is a bit of an odd decision because I don't even drink tea, because it is a liquid and, in being such, it tends to saturate one's internals, making it harder to thoroughly dry yourself out before bed. I tend to prefer to stay the consistency of beef jerky. That is beyond the point. I am making this because I feel like making it, and I will probably end up selling it at some point, but I am in no rush. I started by cutting out a singular hexagon out of a piece of scrap wood to use as a template for all the other ones I would have to make. This one was going to be the parent piece of all the other ones, so to speak, so I took my time with it and just focused on precision and elegance. I then sliced and diced a piece of 1/4 inch plywood to use as a kind of otherworldly dimensional base for the tray. If this sounds like a convoluted mess, I assure you it will make sense in a few minutes, so be patient and don't try to skip pages in the book. From there it was time to start working on cutting up more than 100 little hexagons. I'm too lazy to count the actual number of pieces in the tray, but my guess is that it was somewhere between 150 and 200 little hexagons. I don't go super in depth with how I got to this place in time, but basically I just cut up a bunch of strips that were as wide as I wanted the hexagons to be and about 1/8 inch thick. After I had gathered all the strips together and just looked at them, I began the very tedious task tracing out the hexagons by use of a writing stick, more commonly known as a pen. Link in the description to my website where you can buy a pen that I've made. And then I cut the hexagons out with the scroll saw. Cutting them all out by hand was taking far too long, so I decided to use trickery and lies to get the job done instead. This was far more efficient. I was really getting on board with the magic vibe, so I used my fancy mallet to turn it into a crock. This made it far easier to transport over to my workbench, and then I could just turn it into 2 crocks, and then use my hand to get my project back. If you find yourself filled with a burning, passionate, and perhaps even uncontrollable desire for me, to tell you why there is occasionally the sound of drums in my videos, then you are in luck. The reason you may hear this sound is because my brother Kelvin frequently strikes drums with drumsticks directly above the garage in which I do frequently work. These frequent strikes of the drums rendering the sounds that you occasionally hear, because he hits the drums, which makes a sound, and then you hear it when he hits the drums, resulting in a sound after he hits the drums. Funny how all that works. And now to the most time-consuming part of this entire project, gluing all the little hexagons in place. The time-lapse makes it look like it was quick and easy, but I recorded this video in 30 times speed, and then sped it up a bunch more when I was editing it. I also superglued my thumb to my phone, and ended up leaving some skin on my phone case, but I've been told that my skin is already very inadequate, so I don't see why that's important. The reason it took so long is because all the hexagons were either hand-cut or mysteriously and magically rendered. And both of these methods are only as precise as the person who is actually performing the cut or the magic. Thus, none of the hexagons were absolutely perfect. I used a file to finesse the shape of them some, but even so, there was some crackage and some gaps. And just for the scope of time, I started this process at around 8 p.m. on Monday, 2 days before I was supposed to upload this video so that I wouldn't let down all my very loyal subscribers. 1, or maybe like 2 or 3, probably just 1. But I started at 8 and didn't get done until it was nearly midnight. Thus, when I finished gluing this all up, I only had about 36 hours before the video on the entire project was supposed to be published. The next morning, after the glue had cured, I could use the scroll saw to get the workpiece relatively square and cut off any pieces that were hanging over the edge. People sometimes ask me how I got into woodworking, or how I learned, And the answer is by doing stupid stuff like this. For some reason, I thought that the most logical way of filling all the gaps was to spread glue all over the entire piece and push it around into all the cracks. While this did work in the end, I would have saved a lot of time, sandpaper, and dignity if I had just put the glue in the cracks instead of spreading it all around as though I was making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for one of my uncle's friends from high school. All that to say, I learned by messing things up. Making mistakes is part of life, and one of the best things about mistakes is that they are always there for you. You need to learn to embrace your mistakes, and this in turn will allow you to grow and develop in the future. I then cut the base of the tray down to its final dimensions by use of my table saw. With that done and out of the way, it was time to proceed to make the outsides and the handles for this tea tray, even though I don't even drink tea. I used oak for this, mainly because I could, but also because oak trees can grow to be really big, and I think that the growth of a large oak tree could potentially represent many things which one may strive after. Hold that thought for 1 second.
Oh! Wow!
That was my genuine response to seeing the inside of that board for the first time. Now, back to the oak tree philosophy. As Greek Stoic philosopher Epictetus put it, no great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. End of quote. The point of all this is that if you just take your time with things and don't rush them, the outcome tends to be significantly more favorable. Just as this project came out very nicely because I took my time with it. Don't try to skip steps, as this may result in you being shipwrecked. I chopped up the piece of oak in several nasty ways, cut a groove in each piece to hold the large flat plate thing, and then cut some 45-degree angles on the pieces. After that, I could do a dry fit just to make sure all was in order. Notice how in the last clip, even though I wasn't using a power tool, I was wearing both eye protection and hearing protection. Safety is my #1 priority. I then used my drill press to cut some handle things in the end pieces so that someone could use their hands and pick up the tray and carry it somewhere. If I didn't add the handles, I suppose it would have been a stationary tray or even a single-use item, because without handles there would have been no possible way to grab it. And how can one carry something without first grabbing it? My goodness, I sure do have a lot to say, don't I? I'm struggling to say all I want to say and still stay in touch with what is going on in the video without being left behind. Here's a quote from William Shakespeare. "Men of few words are the best men." So, I guess because I am obviously not the best man, due to the sheer volume of words that endlessly spill from my mouth, I have no choice but to strive to be the groom. Alright, so you just saw me glue up the tray, assuming you weren't just relaxing with your eyes closed and enjoying the soothing sound of my voice as it soothes your various emotions. And now it is time to use a bowl to sand it one more time just to get it smooth and soft to the touch, like my inadequate skin. From there, all that's left to do is just to add a finish. Enjoy a moment of silence for the application of the finish. Behold! You have reached the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please push all the various buttons, and subscribe if you want to see more silly projects like this. Feel free to follow me on Instagram too, link down below. If you are confused by some of the things I said in this video, that's okay. It's probably just an inside joke or me just being my weird self. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your life until you decide to let me waste your time again by watching another of my silly videos. Enjoy!